It's the Estrada family, and only women possess the magic, and they only give birth to daughters. And Mayawel, the goddess, is she is the one who is present at the births, and she will whisper the name of that daughter. And it will be significant in that whatever the name is that is. So if it's Lily, then she's going to possess, the powers that come with a lily, so on and so forth. So Harlow is the only Estrada that is not named after a flower, and she doesn't understand why, and I can't spoil it. Her name actually means heap of stones, and she's very confused why she didn't get this important signification that the rest of her family received. So each of the women also has a very different power, and so we have someone who has the ability to manipulate dreams. We have someone who has the ability to manipulate memory. We have someone who can actually communicate with the flowers. One of the sisters has the ability to communicate with the dead. And so that each have a very specific and different kind of magic. And I thought that would be interesting to kind of explore what that would look like versus everyone having the exact same ability. For so long, I would do interviews and people, and I'm sure you get this all the time. Why do you write? Why do you write? What inspires you? And I really never had a great answer, right? I mean, sure, you want to entertain your reader and, you want to express your creativity. And I finally understood that I'm trying to understand the world. I'm trying to understand this place that we occupy, and what it means to be a human being on this planet. And so for me, I really love the theme, and this plays out in Harlow's story in the Enchanted Hacienda, that she is lacking that confidence and she isn't sure she's good enough to go after her dreams. And I think so often people sit in the silence of their own dreams and they don't speak about them because they're embarrassed or they're ashamed or they think they can't make it or they think that they're not capable. And I always wonder where that comes from, and I'm included in that category and have been included in that category. Does that come from our childhood? Does it come from the world beating us up? Does it come from media? I mean, I don't know. And so watching Harlow develop and go through pain and suffering, because one of my favorite quotes in the book that is also in The Anatomy of Magic is, when all has been destroyed, the goddess shall rise. And so we all have to go through these dark places. And I'll often tell my daughters, I know you don't want to hear this, but I promise there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel and you're going to be stronger and better. I mean, I can tell you, I have learned more from my failures. I've learned more from, the constant rejections that I had for many, many years as a writer. I've learned more from that than I have from being on the New York Times bestseller list or having books optioned or having books sold in other countries. I mean, there's something about falling down and building that resilience muscle and saying, you know what? I'm stronger than I thought I was. And so that was something that I really wanted to play with in Harlow's character arc. The Anatomy of Magic follows Lily, who is the sister of Harlow. She is an OBGYN. When I wrote her, when she came onto the page in the Enchanted Hacienda, I knew she was a tough, tough cookie. And she wore this armor and she was very, everyone was at arm's length, men especially. And she was a serial dater, and I wanted to know why. And I didn't have time to stop and explore that in the Enchanted Hacienda. She ends up becoming extremely important to kind of closing the loop for Harlow at the end of Enchanted Hacienda. And so when I was thinking about the next Estrada woman that I wanted to write about, I was so curious about her and why she was so self-protective. There was this thick skin on her that I wanted to break through. And I knew that The Anatomy of Magic was going to be not necessarily darker, but there was going to be a lot more pain than I think that we saw in the Enchanted Hacienda, and some surprises about who Lily is and why she has been so shattered. As Lily is, everything for her was deflected with humor in the Enchanted Hacienda, and she minimized, sometimes she invalidated. And so to get to know her in a way that she gets to be the starring role, and the book opens with something horrific has happened at the hospital and she's reeling. I mean, she's spiraling. So even her armor can't save her this time. And all the practices that she had in place to guard her heart were no longer working. And so, of course, she returns to the place of magic, to her family home where she can retreat and hopefully start to heal. But of course, she gets there, and instead of healing, everything gets blown open, and she realizes, oh, all is not as it seems. And so I think, writing her and writing through her pain was actually a challenge for me because I hadn't expected it to go so deep. I really hadn't expected it to go so deep, and I followed it, and I think, 10 years ago, I don't know that I could have written that book. I don't know that I would have been brave enough to follow it, because it's hard, when you are the creator, as you know, and we are literally melting into the pages and we become one with this world, we often feel what our characters are feeling, hopefully, and that can be a really challenging place to sit in. And, I find myself kind of wanting to, oh, let me get out of the scene, let me get out of the scene. Because what do we do as humans? We run toward pleasure and away from pain, right? And it's the same way as a writer. And it's hard to sit with that and really get to know the character through their pain. Because I think that you get to know a character a lot better when everything falls apart than when everything is going their way.